Hello, my friends, and thank you very much, John, for this wonderful welcome this evening. It is indeed a privilege and very humbling to be able to represent the pro-life movement here at this convention over this wonderful Eucharistic weekend. I want to thank John and Beth and all of their faithful volunteers who for 19 years now have worked diligently, volunteering and preparing for these amazing events. Every single year is very, very successful, and many of our hearts are touched and certainly our souls are renewed. Tonight I'm going to speak to you on the work of Family Life International in New Zealand, specifically the John Paul II Centres for Life. I'll briefly outline some of the threats that our families and young people are exposed to, but then I will move on to celebrate the stories of hope and joy of our centre here in Auckland. Blessed John Paul II's encyclical Evangelium Vitae and his letter to families specifically, and more generally Pope Paul VI's encyclical Humanae Vitae, the work of family life is built on the very strong foundation of the gospel of life. Blessed Mother Teresa of Calcutta, Saint Gianna Barrettomola, and His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI provide the building blocks of a culture of life, firmly built on the foundations of Blessed John Paul II and his predecessors. For 20 years, FLI has faithfully served New Zealand, and in particular the Auckland Diocese, saving babies, giving love and hope to many, many mothers, giving them direction in their lives, oftentimes their dads and families as well. The Blessed John Paul II taught us that life, especially human life, belongs to God. Whoever attacks human life attacks God's very self. So breaking through all the barriers of individual personal states in life, their living conditions, belief systems, etc., FLI reaches out to all girls and women facing a crisis pregnancy. We offer them every possible help in order that they may choose life for their baby in utero. Pope Benedict XVI tells us, God's love does not differentiate between the newly conceived infant still in his or her mother's womb and the child or young person, or the adult and the elderly person. God does not distinguish between any of these because he sees in each one of us an impression of his own image. This comes from Genesis 1:26. And life also is the first good received from God and is fundamental to all others. To guarantee the right to life for all and in an equal manner for all is the duty upon which the future of humanity depends. And further, only when we meet the living God in Christ do we really know what life is. We are not some casual and meaningless product of evolution. Each one of us is willed, each one of us is loved, and each one of us is necessary. These are the words of Pope Benedict XVI. So we see the thread of evidence weaving its way through the Gospels, through the wisdom of the Church, and of the very presence of God himself in every conceived person. The author of life, the very presence of God himself, is mysteriously and wonderfully present in every single one of us. What an awesome and even fearful responsibility we have to nurture, love, and protect each other, most especially the most vulnerable in our society. Yet, instead of a loving, respectful society, we find ourselves and our loved ones immersed in a very grave, very destructive culture of death. We are concerned and shocked at what our children and grandchildren are exposed to. New social norms, terms of verbal reference and behaviours have taken our natural family life to such depraved levels that we could never, ever even have thought of 20 years ago. We're bombarded with anti-life, anti-family propaganda on a daily basis. There is so much abortion, so much after-birth abortion now is being promoted, which is, as we know, infanticide. Abortifacients and contraception against life materials are being used on a daily basis. The sexualisation of our young children, sexting overtaking the usual texting of young people on their cell phones. So much pornography. Euthanasia is a real threat. It is happening here now in Auckland. This is assisted suicide. And another threat is stem cell research. We're given to understand that adult stem cells are used to and can be used to heal some conditions, but you must be very, very mindful and careful that oftentimes the reference to adult stem cells actually refers to the more mature unborn fetal cells as opposed to embryonic fetal cells. And so it's such a huge threat to us. We must know the enemy. We must know what we are dealing with. But FLI provides the foot soldiers of love and life in this great war on humanity and on God himself. Every person engaged in praying and practical pro-life work, helping in whatever capacity they can, communicating the love approach of life in the workplace, taking care of vulnerable pregnant women, counselling, loving and healing post-abortive women. We're all soldiers of love and life. So thank you for every single person in this room who is involved in any way whatsoever in the nurture and protection of life, faith and family. Together, we all work in the front lines, and we are making huge progress. And with the grace of God, in his own time, we will overthrow the anti-lifers, and that is a certainty. It is most certainly a real certainty. It is happening because at the same time as we witness unprecedented numbers of attacks on life, faith and family, we are also witnessing an unprecedented number of young people rising up in the pro-life community who are taking responsibility and acting in the most positive ways to preach the gospel of life. And in the United States, we are seeing countless numbers of people, of professionals who have been involved in abortion, in the abortion industry, who are laying down their tools of trade and they are turning to God. They are becoming Christians, and more often than not, they are then becoming Catholics. We also now see that over many, many years, there have been around 2,000 Planned Parenthood facilities providing abortions in the United States. And in the last few years, that number has dropped to less than 700. So great things are happening. We are on the winning side because we are a Eucharistic people. We are a people of hope, and we are determined to stay in the fight till our last breath. We do have to remember, though, that it is God's fight. It is his battle, and he has already won by his death on the cross. And so we have to remember always the words of Blessed Mother Teresa, just in case that we forget that it is God's battle and it's not our own personal thing. The Blessed Mother Teresa told us that we must be faithful. We do not have to be successful, but we must be faithful. We must see this then as a lifetime commitment to promote the gospel of life, and always remember that at the very heart and soul of this work is the gospel of life, God himself. This weekend we are celebrating our Eucharistic life, that which is of Jesus himself. We cannot separate this gift of life to every conceived person. We can't separate it from our home life, our work life, or our spiritual life. The Eucharist, the culture of life, our Marian devotion is intrinsically linked, and it is inseparable. And so, in true Eucharistic celebration and deep love for Mother Mary, I would like to share with you some of the stories of love and great hope from our John Paul II Centre of Life here in Auckland. And I think, oh, that's good. No? It is. As I have been speaking with you over these last minutes, I think, good, some images have been appearing on the screen of some of our mums, some of our stories, some of our wonderful things that happen for mothers here in Auckland. So I'm going to tell you a few stories. On February the 5th this year, we enjoyed our second annual Family Fun Day, and we counted, interestingly enough, about 700 people had come on that day, and this family arrived, and they were so proud to come. They had seen the notice in their local church bulletin here on the North Shore, and they decided they were going to come and introduce their 9-year-old daughter to us, and I think to Bishop Pat. Their daughter was adopted, and they wanted to tell us how happy they were as a family and how proud they are of their young lady. And I remembered the birth of this little girl so very, very well. I was present at her birth. Her birth mum had been coming into our centre for many, many months, actually. And I had introduced her to our midwife, Mary Seong, and another midwife, Mary, who was working with Mary Seong, all Marys. Mum had concealed her pregnancy for reasons known only to herself and to Almighty God, and we honoured that. She felt that she needed to adopt this little child to a loving family, and that this child be given the opportunity to have a mother and a father and everything in life that she would never be able to provide and could never reveal to her family. I had the great privilege of giving this tiny baby girl her first feed, of loving her and cuddling her, and within 1 hour of her birth, taking her home to my family, where my darling husband Terry and our children took care of this little girl for 12 days until she could legally go home with her new adoptive parents. And for them to come to our Family Fun Day and to want to be involved was a real blessing and a real joy. And I want to thank those of you who are here this evening and who I see in the audience who may know this family but have made it possible for us to save the life of that little girl and for her to be adopted into such a wonderful family. For these amazing events. Every single year is very, very successful, and many of our hearts are touched and certainly our souls are renewed. Tonight I'm going to speak to you on the work of Family Life International in New Zealand, specifically the John Paul II Centres for Life. I'll briefly outline some of the threats that our families and young people are exposed to, but then I will move on to celebrate the stories. Hello, my friends, and thank you very much, John, for this wonderful welcome this evening. It is indeed a privilege and very humbling to be able to represent the pro-life movement here at this convention over this wonderful Eucharistic weekend. I want to thank John and Beth and all of their faithful volunteers who for 19 years now have worked diligently, volunteering and preparing, sometimes their dads and families as well. The Blessed John Paul II taught us that life, especially human life, belongs to God. Whoever attacks human life attacks God's very self. So breaking through all the barriers of individual personal states in life, their living conditions, belief systems, etc., FLI reaches out to all girls and women facing a crisis pregnancy. We offer them every possible help. Ana Barretimola and His Holiness Pope Benedict XVI provide the building blocks of a culture of life, firmly built on the foundations of Blessed John Paul II and his predecessors. For 20 years, FLI has faithfully served New Zealand, and in particular the Auckland Diocese, saving babies, giving love and hope to many, many mothers, giving them direction in their lives, of hope and joy of our centre here in Auckland. Blessed John Paul II's encyclical Evangelium Vitae and his letter to families specifically, and more generally Pope Paul VI's encyclical Humanae Vitae, the work of family life is built on the very strong foundation of the gospel of life. Blessed Mother Teresa of Calcutta, St.